All right, let's switch gears here to my home state of Texas, where there's been some troubling news. One Beto O'Rourke is making his comeback to the stage. Let's put this up there on the screen. I knew it was going to happen. I knew he would run. Sources say Beto plans Texas comeback in the governor's race. Texas political operators tell Axios. So what does that mean? Number one, Beto was, my memory, in 2018, he was the biggest fundraising Senate candidate in modern American history.
Juggernaut.
Raised absolute tens of millions of dollars. Came within 2% of actually beating Ted Cruz. Now, there's a lot going on there. Ted Cruz is a uniquely unpopular political figure, to say the least, within the state of Texas.
Disliked in Texas and around the world.
Far more disliked than Governor Greg Abbott currently. That being said, there's COVID going on right now. There's actually a lot of consternation. Also, even since 2018, Texas has changed dramatically. I mean, the hundreds of thousands of people who have moved there from California and in New York. I mean, the influx into Austin alone could easily make it and change the demographics of the state. You also saw, though, that Latinos who are voting, voted at a different rate for Donald Trump. A lot of that seems to be holding if you look at some of the polling data in terms of Hispanic support specifically within Texas for the Trump administration or as a corollary against Biden. Also, Beto is the guy who wants to literally take people's guns away. So that was a position that he took after his failed Senate bid. Good luck in my home state.
He's the one who went all in on, like, we're going to send people door to door to get your guns.
Yeah, he was the one. He's like, damn right, we're going to come take your guns. I remember being like, good luck, man. You'll never get elected.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not going to come up during this race whatsoever.
But you guys happen to remember that the media loved this guy, even though he was full of nothing. Had no substance whatsoever. He was completely inexperienced. At best, he's like a child who curses for affect in order to make his case.
And his little,
he's literally a 48-year-old child. Also happens to be married to somebody who's worth like hundreds of millions of dollars, but whatever. So you put that all together, and it's going to be fun because the media is going to do what it always does. Now, I actually do think a Democrat, well, I'll get to this, could possibly come close in the state of Texas. But Beto is somebody who is just a completely poll-tested, almost San Francisco, New York vision of what a Texas liberal should be, as opposed to what an actual Texas Democrat who could win the state would look like. Now, people seem to forget this, but our last Democratic governor, her name was Ann Richards, and she was like one of those like ranch girls,
awesome.
And yeah, I mean, she was actually kind of cool. I don't even particularly like her, but I mean, her affect and all of that was something we shall not see her like again. But take a look exactly at the polling of what this looks like, and you'll see exactly the only person who really seems to have a shot here. So this is a recent Dallas Morning News poll from the University of Texas Tyler as well. It shows actually Matthew McConaughey as the only candidate who might be able to best Governor Abbott. 44-35 for Matthew McConaughey, 35 for Abbott. But then for Beto, it actually shows Abbott at 42 and Beto at 37. Add in some of the other ones, it shows Abbott at 70, Huffines at 15, Abbott at 65, Alan West, who's the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, at 20, Ken Paxton actually 43, Bush 28, Guzman at 5. That would be
so
if
they're
Abbott
testing
doesn't
Republican
run.
Primary potential contenders.
Exactly.
There, and he seems safe against all of them.
Right.
Beto has such like angsty Gen X vibes.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
It's interesting because he was sort of at the leading edge of understanding the shift in the base of the Democratic Party. Part of why he was able to perform so well in that race against Ted Cruz is that he really excited white liberals. That
Houston,
worked out
all that,
extraordinarily well for him nationally in terms of fundraising, in terms of media, worked out pretty well for him in the state of Texas, which, as you always point out, is increasingly becoming a suburban state. So he leaned into that, and those people were really, really excited about him. Now you have to look at these poll numbers and say, look, this is before, not that Beto has like an amazing image right now at this point, but this is before any attack ads are run, reminding people of his comments about guns or anything else. So it's pretty hard to move up from where he is right now. The other thing that was interesting to me, though, was just how large of a swing vote there seems to be in Texas. Because, I mean, just the difference between McConaughey and Beto versus, you know, I think if you polled another Democrat, they'd be even lower than Beto at this point just because of his name recognition, how much he does have support among a certain segment of the public there. There's a electorate that is actually up for grabs. And so it goes against this idea that everything's completely hardened and it just is what it is and no campaigning and nothing matters, no issue set matters, et cetera, et cetera. I think especially at the state level, if Abbott has a bad year, if COVID, you know, continues to spike and they're having problems there, schools have, you know, issues, like if you have situations like that, or remember what happened last winter, there was a big freeze and the Texas power grid just like completely shit the bed. And you had people literally freezing to death in their homes. And he was, you know, very ineffective in terms of dealing with that crisis. And they have not done anything, to my knowledge, to winterize the grid or make sure that doesn't happen again. So if you have a situation like that, and then you have a Democrat, not necessarily like Beto, but maybe like Matthew McConaughey or somebody else, who is inoffensive to a large swath of voters or kind of undefined politically and doesn't have a big record that you can use against them, then I think you ultimately have a shot. Even with McConaughey, though, I'm skeptical because these early numbers are good for him, but that's, again, before he's defined, before he's asked any questions, before he's in a debate, before he says anything that can really be used against him in a negative ad in this sort of situation. So I think it's still tough sledding for Democrats at this point in Texas, especially since, as you point out, part of what they were banking on in terms of moving Texas into the blue column was that the Latino vote would continue to show up for them and not just stay at the level that it was, but it would continue to move into their column, that they would get more new voters registered, that they would be able to really bank on that. And the Latino population in Texas is very young. So as they come of age and be able to vote, they thought, oh, this is a great growing demographic on our side. It's not working out quite the way, or at least not quite at the pace that they thought it ultimately would.
Right. I will say one thing that layers on top of all this, it's that recent abortion law. So that actually is something that could mobilize some Democratic turnout. And that's the one thing that could possibly change the game. I mean, I've been talking with people who know the state better than, obviously I haven't lived there in a while, but what it is that there are enough of those people who registered Democrat back in 2018 for Beto were kind of activated within the Texas Democratic Party. Add in the hundreds of thousands from California and from New York who are actually one of those, the rare case of the actual like socially liberal but kind of fiscally conservative voter, as in they've moved from California and New York because of the taxes. Let's all be honest about what was exactly going on there. Plus, you know, cheaper land, cheaper houses, etc. But socially, they remain pretty rock hard liberal, which means that this Texas abortion law could be something, again, I want to say could, that could mobilize Democratic turnout at a higher level. At the same time, a lot of evangelicals, I grew up with a lot of them, who this is the crowning jewel, achievement, right? So they might come out in support of Governor Abbott. And I think one thing that does overlay all of this, people don't seem to realize governor of Texas is one of the most powerless positions in the entire nation. I always try to tell people this during the race. The people who created our state made it so the legislature can't meet more than once every 2 years because they don't want more laws to be passed. And they specifically did not invest very much power in the governor and the executive himself because they didn't want him to be able to do anything. It's literally baked into the Constitution. And it happens to be one of the reasons George W. Bush was so ill prepared for the presidency because it was the only job that he held before. The lieutenant governor's race is actually a lot more important if you care about the day-to-day running. But that's my own personal diatribe.
Good political springboard, though.
Exactly.
I mean, if Beto was able to become governor of Texas, then,
it'd be huge. He'd run for president.
Yeah, then he'd run for president again, and maybe this time possibly would have a better shot at it. It is incredible to think back about his trajectory. I mean, this guy was
failed congressman.
Yeah, but he was so sought after. Remember when he went to Iowa and he's standing on the media's freaking out. He had at the beginning of his presidential
people went
campaign,
to go work for him.
They did, that's right. Jen O'Malley Dillon, who ends up with Biden on the winning case, she started with Beto. They bet on, I mean, Obama sort of tacitly was betting on this guy. That's what you can tell by where the staff was going, truly.
I know.
And he is also one of these people who has that annoying, like he sort of like patterned his speech after Obama too, which I find to be the most irritating thing in the entire world. But he had a massive flood of donations at the beginning. Remember, who was it that was making the case that was like, oh, Bernie's got to be worried about young people flocking to Beto O'Rourke?
Oh, I forgot about that.
Instead, right? I mean, you know, hottest take of all time. And then people actually listened to him on a debate stage and they were like, nah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think he ever got more than a couple points in the polls. Remember also whenever he was standing up on everything?
On the camera, right.
Reason. He was constantly standing. He was getting his disgusting
his
feet.
Vanity Fair profile, born to be in it. Right. His Oprah Winfrey Times Square interview.
Some of the greatest hits we're reliving there.
Incredible times, incredible times. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut. Our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions. All that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.